Welcome to Great Books for Great Sleep, the show that helps you get to sleep by helping you drift in to some of the world's greatest books. Each evening, we bring you a new production of a classic book with soothing background sounds, the world's best voices, and catch-ups to make sure you never have to worry about losing your place. Fall asleep knowing that you can jump right into the next episode, as we'll recap all the important bits for you. Now, lie back, relax, and let your mind turn to the words of the world's greatest authors and away from the cares of your day. In our previous episode, we met Cassandra Morgeson, a fiercely curious and headstrong little girl who'd rather climb furniture for books than obey orders. She favored the thrilling and forbidden stories over the proper ones, much to her mother's dismay. After getting scolded, Cassandra sneaked into her great-grandfather's room and found an ancient, dying man in bed, marking her first real encounter with mortality. Then, 10-year-old Cassandra painted a portrait of her coastal New England hometown Surrey, a place steeped in modest family history but devoid of glory. We learned about her grandfather Locke's ambitious failures and her parents' serious marriage. Locke Morgeson, her father, married Mary Warren, a pious woman from Barmouth. Cassandra's family legacy is ordinary, but her voice is anything but. Tonight, family secrets bubble up during soap making as Cassandra overhears talk of inheritance and tension. Her rebellious streak erupts at school, leading to expulsion and more trouble at home. Tea time with church ladies turns into a quiet war of siblings, mice, and a murdered butterfly. Cassandra and Veronica clash in a house full of gossip, faith, and hidden pranks.
Chapter 3. Mrs. Saunders, said Mother, don't let that soap boil over. Cassie, keep away from it. Lord, replied Mrs. Saunders, there's no fat in the bones to bile. Cassie's grown dreadful fast, ain't she? How long has the old man been dead, Miss Morgeson? 3 years, Mrs. Saunders. How time do fly, remarked Mrs. Saunders, mopping her wrinkled face with a dark blue handkerchief. The winter's sass is hardly put in the cellar, for we have to cut off the sprouts and up the taters for planting again. We shall all follow him soon. And she stirred the bones in the great kettle with the vigour of an ogress. When I heard her ask the question about Grandfather Locke, the interval that had elapsed since his death swept through my mind. What a little girl I was at the time. How much had since happened. But no thought remained with me long. I was about to settle whether I would go to the beach and wade or into the woods for snake flowers till school time, when my attention was again arrested by Mrs. Saunders saying, I suppose Ma'am Tamore went off with a large slice and Mr. John Morgeson is mad to this day? Mother was prevented from answering by the appearance of the said Mr. John Morgeson, who darkened the threshold of the kitchen door, but advanced no further. I looked at him with curiosity. If he were mad, he might be interesting. He was a large, portly man, over 60, with splendid black hair slightly grizzled, a prominent nose, and fair complexion. I did not like him, and determined not to speak to him. Say good morning, Cassandra, said Mother in a low voice. No, I answered loudly, I am not fond of my grandfather. Mrs. Saunders mopped her face again, grinning with delight behind her handkerchief. Debbie, my wife, wants you, Miss Saunders, after you have made Mary's soap, he said. Surely, she answered. Where is the black horse today? He asked Mother. Locke has gone to Milford with him. I wanted the black horse today, he said, turning away. He's a mighty grand man, he is, commented Mrs. Saunders. I am pesky glad, Miss Morgeson, that you have never put foot in his house. I applaud your spirit. School time, Cassie, said Mother. Will you have some gingerbread to carry? Tell me when you come home what you have read in the New Testament." "My boy does read beautiful," said Mrs. Saunders. "Where's the potash, Miss Morgeson?" I heard the bell toll as I loitered along the roadside, pulling a dandelion here and there, for it was in the month of May, and throwing it in the rut for the next wheel to crush. When I reached the schoolhouse, I saw through the open door that the New Testament exercise was over. The teacher, Mrs. Desire Cushman, a tall, slender woman in a flounced calico dress, was walking up and down the room. A class of boys and girls stood in a zigzag line before her, swaying to and fro and drawling the multiplication table. She was yawning as I entered, which exercise forbade her speaking, and I took my seat without a reprimand. The flies were just coming. I watched their sticky legs as they feebly crawled over my old unpainted notched desk and crumbled my gingerbread for them. But they seemed to have no appetite. Some of the younger children were drowsy already, lulled by the hum of the whisperers. Feeling very dull, I asked permission to go to the water pail for a drink. Let the tin cup fall into the water so that the floor might be splashed, made faces at the good scholars, and did what I could to make the time pass agreeably. At noon, Mother sent my dinner, with the request that I should stay till night, on account of my being in the way while the household was in the crisis of soap making and whitewashing. I was exasperated, but I stayed. In the afternoon, the minister came with 2 strangers to visit the school. I went through my lessons with dignified inaccuracy and was commended. Going back, I happened to step on a loose board under my seat. I determined to punish Mrs. Desire for the undeserved praise I had just received, and pushed the board till it clattered and made a dust. When Mrs. Desire detected me, she turned white with anger. I pushed it again, making so much noise that the visitors turned to see the cause. She shook her head in my direction, and I knew what was in store, as we had been at enmity a long time, and she only waited for a decisive piece of mischief on my part. As soon as the visitors had gone, she said in a loud voice, "Cassandra Morgeson, take your books and go home. You shall not come here another day." I was glad to go, and marched home with the air of a conqueror, going to the keeping room where Mother sat with a basket of sewing. I saw Temperance Tinkham, the help, a maiden of 30, laying the table for supper. "Don't wrinkle the tablecloth," she said crossly, "and hang up your bonnet in the entry where it belongs," taking it from me as she gave the order, and going out to hang it up herself. "I am turned out of school, Mother, for pushing a board with my foot." "Hi," said Father, who was waiting for his supper. "Come here," and he whistled to me. He took me on his knee, while Mother looked at me with doubt and sorrow. "She is almost a woman, Mary." "Locke, do you know that I am 38? "And you are 33, Father," I exclaimed. He looked younger. I thought him handsome. He had a frank, firm face, an abundance of light, curly hair, and was very robust. I took off his white beaver hat and pushed the curls away from his forehead. He had his riding whip in his hand. I took that too, and snapped it at our little dog, Kip. Father's clothes also pleased me, a lavender-coloured coat with brass buttons and trousers of the same colour. I mentally composed for myself a suit to match his, and thought how well we should look calling at Lady Teazle's house in London, only I was worried because my bonnet seemed to be too large for me. A loud crash in the kitchen disturbed my dream, and Temperance rushed in, dragging my sister Veronica, whose hair was streaming with milk. She had pulled a panful over her from the buttery shelf, while Temperance was taking up the supper. Father laughed, but Mother said, "What have I done to be so tormented by these terrible children?" Her mild blue eyes blazed as she stamped her foot and clenched her hands. Father took his hat and left the room. Veronica sat down on the floor, with her eyes fixed upon her, and I leaned against the wall. It was a gust that I knew would soon blow over. Veronica knew it also. At the right moment, she cried out, "Help, Very, she is sorry." "Do eat your supper," Temperance called out in a loud voice. "The hash is burnt to flinders." She remained in the room to comment on our appetites and encourage Veronica, who was never hungry, to eat. Veronica was an elfish creature, 9 years old, diminutive and pale. Her long, silky brown hair, which was as straight as an Indian's like Mother's, and which she tore out when angry, usually covered her face, and her wild eyes looked wilder still peeping through it. She was too strange-looking for ordinary people to call her pretty, and so odd in her behaviour, so full of tricks, that I did not love her. She was a silent child, and liked to be alone. But whoever had the charge of her must be watchful. She tasted everything and burnt everything within her reach. A blazing fire was too strong a temptation to be resisted. The disappearance of all loose articles was ascribed to her, but nothing was said about it, for punishment made her more impish and daring in her pursuits. She had a habit of frightening us by hiding and appearing from places where no one had thought of looking for her. People shook their heads when they observed her. The Morgesons smiled significantly when she was spoken of and asked, "Do you think she is like her mother?" There was a conflict in Mother's mind respecting Veronica. She did not love her as she loved me, but strove the harder to fulfill her duty. When Very suffered long and mysterious illnesses, which made her helpless for weeks, she watched her day and night, but rarely caressed her. At other times, Very was left pretty much to herself and her ways, which were so separate from mine that I scarcely saw her. We grew up ignorant of each other's character, though Very knew me better than I knew her. In time, I discovered that she had closely observed me when I was most unaware. We began to prosper about this time. Old Loch Morgeson had a long head, people said, when they talked of our affairs. Father profited by his grandfather's plans, and his means too. Less visionary, he had modified and brought out practically many of his projections. Old Loch had left little to his son John Morgeson, in the belief that father was the man to carry out his ideas. Besides money, he left him a tract of ground running north and south, a few rods beyond the old house, and desired him to build upon it. This he was now doing, and we expected to move into our new house before autumn. All the Morgesons wished to put money in a company as soon as father could prove that it would be profitable. They were ready to own shares in the ships which he expected to build, when it was certain that they would make lucky voyages. He declined their offers, but they all knuckled to the man who had been bold enough to break the lifelong stagnation of Surrey, and approved his plans as they matured. His mind was filled with the hope of creating a great business which should improve Surrey. New streets had been cut through his property and that of grandfather, who, narrow as he was, could not resist the popular spirit. Lots had been laid out, and cottages had gone up upon them. To matters of minor importance, father gave little heed. His domestic life was fast becoming a habit. The constant enlargement of his schemes was already a necessary stimulant. I did not go back to Mrs. Desire's school. Mother said that I must be useful at home. She sent me to Temperance, and Temperance sent me to play, or told me to go a-visitin'. I did not care to visit, for in consequence of being turned out of school, which was considered an indelible disgrace and long remembered, my schoolmates regarded me in the light of a pariah and put on insufferably superior airs when they saw me. So, like Veronica, I amused myself and passed days on the seashore or in the fields and woods, Mother keeping me in long enough to make a square of patchwork each day and to hear her read a psalm, a duty which I bore with patience, by guessing when the sealers would come in and counting them. But wherever I was, or whatever I did, no feeling of beauty ever stole into my mind. I never turned my face up to the sky to watch the passing of a cloud, or mused before the undulating space of sea, or looked down upon the earth with the curiosity of thought or spiritual aspiration. I was moved and governed by my sensations, which continually changed and passed away, to come again and deposit vague ideas which ignorantly haunted me. The literal images of all things which I saw were impressed on my shapeless mind, to be reproduced afterward by faculties then latent. But what satisfaction was that? Doubtless the ideal faculty was active in Veronica from the beginning. In me it was developed by the experience of years. No remembrance of any ideal condition comes with the remembrance of my childish days, and I conclude that my mind, if I had any, existed in so rudimental a state that it had little influence upon my character. Chapter 4. One afternoon in the following July, tired of walking in the mown fields and of carrying a nest of mice, which I had discovered under a hayrick, I concluded I would begin a system of education with them. So arranging them on a grape leaf, I started homeward. Going in by the kitchen, I saw Temperance wiping the dust from the best china, which elated me, for it was a sign that we were going to have company to tea. "You evil child," she said, "where have you been? Your mother has wanted you these hours, to dress you in your red French calico with wings to it. Some of the members are coming to tea, Miss Seneth Gellat, and she that was Clarissa Tripp, Snow now, and Miss Sophronie G. Dexter, and more besides." I put my mice in a basket and begged Temperance to allow me to finish wiping the china. She consented, adjuring me not to let it fall. Miss Morgeson would die if any of it should be broken. I adored it too. Each piece had a peach or pear or a bunch of cherries painted on it in lustrous brown. The handles were like gold cords, and the covers had knobs of gilt grapes. "What preserves are you going to put on the table?" I asked. "Them West Ingy things Cape and Curtis's son brought home, and quartered quince, though I expect Miss Dexter will remark that the syrup is ropey." "I wish you wouldn't have cheese." "We must have cheese," she said solemnly. "I expect they'll drink our green tea till they make bladders of themselves. It is so good. Your father is a first-rate man. He is an excellent provider, and any woman ought to be proud of him, for he does buy number one in provisions." I looked at her with admiration and respect. "Cape and Curtis," she continued, pursuing a train of thought which the preserves had started, "will never come home, I guess. He has been in foreign parts forever and a day. His wife has looked for him, a-twirling her thumb and fingers every day for 10 years. I heard your mother had engaged her to go in the new house. She'll take the upper hand of us all. Your grandfather, Mr. John Morgeson, is willing to part with her. Tired of her, I suppose. She has been housekeeping there, off and on, these 30 years. She's 50, if she is a day, is Hepsy Curtis." "Is she as stingy as you are?" I asked. "You'll find out for yourself, miss. I rather think you won't be allowed to crumble over the buttery shelves." I finished the cup and was watching her while she grated loaf sugar over a pile of doughnuts when Mother entered and begged me to come upstairs with her to be dressed. "Where is Very, Mother?" "In the parlour, with a lemon in one hand and Robinson Crusoe in the other. She will be good, she says. Cassie, you won't tease me today, will you?" "No, indeed, Mother," and clapping my hands, "I like you too well." She laughed. "These Morgesons beat the dogs," I heard Temperance say as we shut the door and went upstairs. I skipped over the shiny, lead-coloured floor of the chamber in my stockings while Mother was taking from the bureau a clean suit for me and singing "Bonnie Doon" with the sweetest voice in the world. She soon arrayed me in my red calico dress, spotted with yellow stars. I was proud of its buckram undersleeves, though they scratched my arms, and admired its wings, which extended over the protecting buckram. "It is 3 o'clock. The company will come soon. Be careful of your dress. You must stand by me at the table to hand the cups of tea." She left me standing in a chair so that I might see my pantalettes in the high-hung glass and the effect of my balloon-like sleeves. Then I went back to the kitchen to show myself to Temperance and to enjoy the progress of tea. The table was laid in the long keeping room adjoining the kitchen, covered with a striped cloth of crimson and blue, smooth as satin to the touch. Temperance had turned the plates upside down around the table and placed in a straight line through the middle a row of edibles. She was going to have waffles, she said, and shortcake. They were all ready to bake, and she wished to the Lord they would come and have it over with. With the silver sugar tongs, I slyly nipped lumps of sugar for my private eating and surveyed my features in the distorting mirror of the pot-bellied silver teapot, ordinarily laid up in flannel. When the company had arrived, Temperance advised me to go in the parlour. "Sit down when you get there and show less," she said. I went in softly and stood behind Mother's chair, slightly abashed for a moment in the presence of the party. Some 8 or 10 ladies, dressed in black levantine or cinnamon-coloured silks, who were seated in rocking chairs, all the rocking chairs in the house having been carried to the parlour for the occasion. They were knitting, and everyone had a square velvet work bag. Most of them wore lace caps trimmed with white satin ribbon. They were larger, more rotund, and older than Mother, whose appearance struck me by contrast. Perhaps it was the first time I observed her dress. Her face I must have studied before, for I knew all her moods by it. Her long, lustreless brown hair was twisted around a high-topped tortoiseshell comb. It was so heavy and so carelessly twisted that the comb started backward, threatening to fall out. She had minute rings of filigreed gold in her ears. Her dress was a grey pongee, simply made and short. I could see her round-toed Morocco shoes, tied with black ribbon. She usually took out her shoestrings, not liking the trouble of tying them. A ruffle of fine lace fell around her throat, and the sleeves of her short-waisted dress were puffed at the shoulders. Her small white hands were folded in her lap, for she was idle. On the little finger of her left hand twinkled a brilliant garnet ring set with diamonds. Her face was colourless, the forehead extremely low, the nose and mouth finely cut, the eyes of heavenly blue. Although youth had gone, she was beautiful, with an indescribable air of individuality. She influenced all who were near her. Her atmosphere enveloped them. She was not aware of it, being too indifferent to the world to observe what effect she had in it, and only realised that she was to herself a self-tormentor. Whether she attracted or repelled, the power was the same. I make no attempt to analyse her character. I describe her as she appeared, and as my memory now holds her. I never understood her, and for that reason she attracted my attention. I felt puzzled now. She seemed so different from anybody else. My observation was next drawn to Veronica, who, entirely at home, walked up and down the room in a blue cambric dress. She was twisting in her fingers a fine gold chain, which hung from her neck. I caught her cunning glance as she flourished some tansy leaves before her face, imitating Mrs. Dexter to the life. I laughed and she came to me. "See," she said softly, "I have something from heaven." She lifted her white apron, and I saw under it, pinned to her dress, a splendid black butterfly, spotted with red and gold. "It is mine," she said. "You shall not touch it. God blew it in through the window, but it has not breathed yet." "Pooh, I have 3 mice in the kitchen." "Where is the mother?" "In the hayrick, I suppose. I left it there." "I hate you," she said, in an enraged voice. "I would strike you if it wasn't for this holy butterfly." "Cassandra," said Mrs. Dexter, "does look like her pa. The likeness is extraordinary. They say my William resembles me, but parents are no judges." A faint murmur rose from the knitters, which signified agreement with her remark. "I do think," she continued, "that it is high time Dr. Snell had a colleague. He has outlived his usefulness. I never could say that I thought he was the right kind of man for our congregation. His principles as a man I have nothing to say against, but why don't we have revivals?" When Mrs. Dexter wished to be elegant, she stepped out of the vernacular. She was about to speak again when the whole party broke into a loud talk on the subject she had started, not observing Temperance, who appeared at the door and beckoned to Mother. I followed her out. "The members are going it, ain't they?" she said. "Do see if things are about right, Miss Morgeson." Mother made a few deviations from the straight lines in which Temperance had ranged the viands and told her to put the tea on the tray and the chairs round the table. "There's no place for Mr. Morgeson," observed Temperance. "He is in Milford," Mother replied. "The brethren won't come, I suppose, till after dark?" "I suppose not." "Glad to get rid of their wives' clack, I guess." From the silence which followed Mother's return to the parlour, I concluded they were performing the ancient ceremony of waiting for someone to go through the doorway first. They came at last with an air of indifference, as if the idea of eating had not yet occurred, and delayed taking seats till Mother urged it. Then they drew up to the table, hastily, turned the plates right side up, spread large silk handkerchiefs over their laps, and with their eyes fixed on space, preserved a dead silence, which was only broken by Mother's inquiries about their taste in milk or sugar. Temperance came in with plates of waffles and buttered shortcake, which she offered with a cut-and-thrust air, saying, as she did so, "I expect you can't eat them. I know they are tough." Everybody, however, accepted both. She then handed round the preserves and went out to bake more waffles. By this time the cups had circled the table, but no one had tasted a morsel. "Do help yourselves," Mother entreated, whereat they fell upon the waffles. "Temperance is as good a cook as ever," said one. "She is a prize, isn't she, Miss Morgeson?" "She is faithful and industrious," Mother replied. All began at once on the subject of help, and were as suddenly quenched by the reappearance of Temperance with fresh waffles and a dish of apple fritters. "Do eat these if you can, ladies. The apples are only russets, and they are kinda dead for flavouring. I see you don't eat a mite. I expected you could not. It's poor trash." And she passed the cake along, everybody taking a piece of each kind. After drinking a good many cups of tea and praising it, their asceticism gave way to its social effect, and they began to gossip, ridiculing their neighbours, and occasionally launching innuendos against their absent lords. It is well known that when women meet together, they do not discuss their rights, but take them, in revealing the little weaknesses and peculiarities of their husbands. The worst wife-driver would be confounded at the air of easy superiority assumed on these occasions by the meekest and most unsuspicious of her sex. Insinuations of so-and-sos not being any better than she should be passed from mouth to mouth with a glance at me, and I heard the proverb of little pictures when Mother rose suddenly from the table and led the way to the parlour. "Where is Veronica?" asked Temperance, who was piling the debris of the feast. "She has been in mischief, I'll warrant. Find her, Cassandra." She was upstairs putting away her butterfly in the leaves of her little Bible. She came down with me, and Temperance coaxed her to eat her supper by vowing that she should be sick abed unless she liked her fritters and waffles. I thought of my mice while making a desultory meal standing, and went to look at them. They were gone. Wondering if Temperance had thrown the creatures away, I remembered that I had been foolish enough to tell Veronica and rushed back to her. When she saw me, she raised a saucer to her face, pretending to drink from it. "Very, where are the mice?" "Are they gone?" "Tell me. What will you do if I don't?" And I know. And I flew upstairs, tore the poor butterfly from between the leaves of the Bible, crushed it in my hand, and brought it down to her. She did not cry when she saw it, but choked a little and turned away her head. It was now dark, and hearing a bustle in the entry, I looked out and saw several staid men slowly rubbing their feet on the doormat. The husbands had come to escort their wives home, and by 9 o'clock they all went. Veronica and I stayed by the door after they had gone. "Look at Mrs. Dexter," she said. "I put the mice in her work bag." I burst into a laugh, which she joined in presently. "I am sorry about the butterfly, Very." And I attempted to take her hand, but she pushed me away and marched off whistling. A few days after this, sitting near the window at twilight, intent upon a picture in a book of travels of a Hindu swinging from a high pole with hooks in his flesh, and trying to imagine how much it hurt him, my attention was arrested by a mention of my name in a conversation held between Mother and Mr. Park, one of the neighbours. He occasionally spent an evening at our house, passing it in polemical discussion, revising the prayers and exhortations which he made at conference meetings. The good man was a little vain of having the formulas of his creed at his tongue's end. She sometimes lost the thread of his discourse, but argued also as if to convince herself that she could rightly distinguish between truth and illusion, but never discussed religious topics with Father. Like all the Morgesons, he was orthodox, accepting what had been provided by others for his spiritual accommodation. He thought it well that existing institutions should not be disturbed. Something worse might be established instead. His turn of mind, in short, was not evangelical. "Are the Hindus in earnest, Mother?" And I thrust the picture before her. She warned me off. "Do you think, Mr. Park, that Cassandra can understand the law of transgression?" An acute perception that it was in my power to escape a moral penalty by willful ignorance was revealed to me, that I could continue the privilege of sinning with impunity. His answer was complicated, and he quoted several passages from the scriptures. Presently he began to sing, and I grew lonesome. The life within me seemed a black cave. "Our nature's totally depraved, the heart a sink of sin. Without a change we can't be saved, ye must be born again." Temperance opened the door. "Is Veronica going to bed tonight?" she asked.